A dollar is a dollar and a dime is a dime. We'd sing another course, but we ain't got the time. Back to MMA Lockup.
All right, MMA Lockup fans, welcome back to your last segment of the show. It is a sad time for us as we leave you guys in this hour. Chris Matthews is back for the closing segment. Chris, how you doing?
My joy shows no bounds, Bernard.
Yeah, Chris is down there in Central Arkansas, really making some connections, really spreading the name down there in Fayetteville while I'm up here spreading the name down there in Central Arkansas while I'm in Fayetteville, holding it down in the studio. Chris, there's a couple of things we were talking about during the break there. Daniel Cormier and John Jones. Really, we were just talking about beef in general, so we got a couple of beefs to bring up. Daniel Cormier and John Jones beefing, still going on. Is John Jones to the heavyweight class imminent, or is Cormier going to drop down?
John Jones he's going to stay at the light heavyweight. He's going to stay where he's dominating. Daniel Cormier, this will be his last fight in the heavyweight division. He will defeat Roy Nelson. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. I know Roy Nelson has a great skill set in all facets of his game. That being said, he got manhandled by Frank Mir, who happened to get manhandled by Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier will make a work of art out of Roy Nelson. He will drop to light heavyweight, and he will end up fighting Alexander Gustafsson for the light heavyweight championship. What can I say?
Oh, wow. So Chris goes against everything that I thought he would say, and he's going to destroy Roy Nelson, and also that Gustafsson is going to beat John Jones. Was that a backhanded prediction?
Yeah, that's what it was. Very observant. Yeah, I mean, just looking at this, I think, it's like the super fight talk we heard about with Anderson Silva and GSP, or Anderson Silva and John Bones Jones. It seems like whenever we hear those things, or Fedor Emelianenko and Brock Lesnar, it does seem to happen, okay? So we hear this John Jones, Daniel Cormier talk. It's not going to happen, just like it hadn't happened in the past with the other super fights. I'd love to see it happen, but if we look at history says it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised that everybody doesn't have Gustafsson ranked higher. I mean, I think he's 3 or 4 in most people's rankings, and he's 2 to me. I like Lyoto Machida. He's probably not 2 now in everybody's rankings. He was before last weekend's event, but Gustafsson really should be number 2. He should have been number 2 for a while now. I think that's kind of weird that he's not.
I think a real key fact to Alexander Gustafsson is the fact of how he handled Mauricio Shogun Rua, okay? Now, people will say, well, John Bones Jones defeated Mauricio Shogun Rua and finished him. Yes, that's very true. But Mauricio Shogun Rua came off over a 300-day layoff, which anybody that knows anything about Mauricio Shogun Rua, he is horrible after a layoff. He got defeated by Forrest Griffin after a layoff. And I love Forrest Griffin. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big Forrest Griffin fan. That being said, he fought John Bones Jones after a long layoff. Now, moving over to the other side, he fought Alexander Gustafsson after being healthy, okay? Alexander Gustafsson looked phenomenal, and he manhandled Mauricio Shogun Rua, a healthy Mauricio Shogun Rua that was not rusty, okay? So, it makes one wonder, how good is Alexander Gustafsson, okay? Alexander Gustafsson, in my opinion, he is the biggest threat right now in the light heavyweight division to John Bones Jones. He's got a long wingspan, not as long as John Bones Jones, but he's actually bigger than John Bones Jones. And when it comes to the clinch, I'm going to take Alexander Gustafsson. I just am, okay? John Bones Jones is going to have to take him to the ground, which could very well happen. But you know as well as I do, Alexander Gustafsson is going to try and bang with this guy. And we're yet to see how good that chin is of John Bones Jones.
I've got to go in the opposite direction there and pick Jones, although I've been calling for this fight for most of the year. I've been calling for this fight, and I'm really surprised it took so long to happen. I think it's the best showdown we're going to have at light heavyweight. I think nobody else in that class is going to put up a fight right now for John Jones except Alexander Gustafsson. And I'm definitely not going to count out Alexander Gustafsson, but, I've been a John Jones fan as well as an analyst of his for a while, and the guy just looks undefeatable. And the thing is does Gustafsson figure out John Jones, or does John Jones keep climbing that mountain? I'm definitely going to go with John Jones winning by spectacular fashion, whichever way that's going to happen. Although it is not far-fetched to say that Gustafson will be spectacular also. We're going to move on. You're listening to MMA Lockup here as we wrap up the show this week with Chris Matthews down in Central Arkansas, Bernard Oliver here in studio in Fayetteville. Tough is having its own beef before the show even starts, with Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate really going at it. Ronda being in the news a lot more than Miesha. She's taking a lot of shots at Miesha, which Miesha probably deserves, but apparently there are some things in the house that went on that just escalated this beef.
Yeah, so it comes as no surprise. These two women, they don't like each other. Point blank, they don't like each other. Besides Chris Cyborg Santos taking on Ronda Rousey, putting them on the Ultimate Fighter, I think you had to put these two together just because of the fact they do not like each other. I mean, you've seen the different coaches that have taken part in Tough before. Rampage Jackson, I believe it was him and Rashad Evans.
Yeah.
Those guys didn't like each other at all. They did not like each other at all. And it made for good television. If you're going to have two women that are going to represent the UFC for the first women's Ultimate Fighter, I think it's a no-brainer to have these two on there. I don't know if I'm politically incorrect by saying they're just pleasing to the eyes as well. Two attractive women. Heck, what more can I say? Women fighting.
Don and I talked about that last week about we have crushes. Amanda Nunes has been a crush of mine for years. She knocked out her opponent last week. And Don really loves Miesha Tate, actually. That is his UFC crush. So, Chris, I guess we could ask you this week, who's your UFC women's crush?
Ooh, women's crush. I would say probably Gina Carano.
Oh yeah, Gina. I guess you can still really count Gina. Gina's she's a pioneer for women's MMA, so you definitely can count her. I mean, Ronda, you can't count out Ronda. She's so beautiful and so talented. But
I'm going to take a shot right here. I'll go ahead and just take it. It'll probably make some people mad, but I would say Miesha Tate, but she is always taking pictures with a certain someone that I've done an interview with that just really annoyed me, and so I think that knocked her down a peg or two whenever I look on my Facebook and these two are taking pictures together that are provocative and whatnot. At least Ronda Rousey doesn't do that,
Yeah, I think Don will probably have something to say about that. We'll probably share a laugh about that later. But, yeah, man, Miesha definitely gets a lot of flack from Ronda for her male choice in life. So it's pretty funny to see them. Moving on, we're going to have a little fun with you guys. Here, I was going through news before the show, and I was like, man, what can we talk about? And I see Melvin Gillard and Ross Pearson get the co-main event at UFC on Fox 8 in England. And, I kind of started wondering, what's with co-main event? What does that even mean? Why is there a co-main event? It's just the main event and the fight before the main event. What's with co-main events, Chris?
Well, I think co-main event means that neither one of them are strong fights to hold the card. So you need to have two of them. The fact that Ross Pearson, he's an Englishman, you've got to have an Englishman that is at least part of the main event. Who's the other fight in the co-main event in that particular card?
I actually need to look that up really quickly. Let me see if I can see it real fast. I actually didn't look at that, but I was just kind of like, I got so stuck on that whole co-main event thing. I don't even see it up on UFC.com right now. Must be, we're going to have to look that up. We'll have that for you guys after the show, but
co-main event, that's code for, hey, wait a second, we're going to have two main events here just in case one of the guys gets injured in one of the fights. It's really, in my opinion, a safety net.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that. You have that whole card that, maybe it's not as great, that fight that's not as great, but it's good. And then you have the co-main event to kind of bring it up a little bit. I never really thought about it that way.
But you got to have an Englishman on the main event, at least one of the fights. Just like in Brazil, you're not going to have a fight in Brazil to where a Brazilian's not the main event. It just does not happen.
Yeah, actually, Bisping and Munoz are the main event for that event. So you got another English guy representing in the main event too. So I really feel like that's shaping up to be a pretty good main event.
And Melvin Gillard, he was really good in his last fight. He's trying to fight his way back up the rankings. Ross Pearson is someone he could fight in England. He's just fought not too long ago, that being Melvin Gillard. He can get back in. If he gets enough victory, I guess what's more impressive, having two impressive victories against decent opponents in a close time frame, or having two good victories with less separation of time. I'm going to go with the person that has two victories in a short proximity of time. And really, Melvin Gillard has an opportunity here to jump up that ladder.
Yeah, definitely. I really think it's a good time. But Jeremy used to like to make fun of me for being a Melvin Gillard fan, and he used to say I have a man crush on him. I don't, but I kind of lost faith in him because he loses every time he gets a shot, about to get a title shot. He loses that fight, and he's with a new camp now, so I'm happy kind of that he's gone to a camp that I feel like is going to help him. Before we get out of here, very quickly, we'll probably highlight on this a little bit more next week, but Fedor to the UFC. I know Chris is probably happy about this, but we're talking, is that a possibility with, the UFC trying to have a Russian event, a Russian venue? Does Fedor headline that first UFC event in Russia?
My prediction last year was that Fedor Emelianenko would be in the UFC by the end of 2013. I'm going to retract that a little bit. I'm going to say by February of 2014, Fedor Emelianenko, there will be plans of him taking part in the first UFC event in Russia. And look at it this way, folks. Hey, we were at UFC 162 talking to Dana White. We asked the question, and he came out and pretty much told us nothing, okay? Nothing is something if he's not throwing F-bombs with Fedor in the same sentence. He didn't do that, okay? He was very slow to say it, and he said him and Lorenzo had plans to go to Russia, and it's not for vacation. Let me just make this clear. Vladimir Putin, Fedor Emelianenko, very tight. To think that the UFC is going to have the first card in Russia and Fedor not be on that card, that would be an insult in the eyes of the Russians, okay? And don't forget, this is how Russia works. Tom Kraft, owner of the Pats, shows Vladimir Putin his Super Bowl ring. Vladimir Putin looks at the ring, puts it in his pocket, and two KGB guys get in front of him and say, Mr. Putin's done now. They have a different way of doing business, all right? So to think that the greatest MMA fighter in Russian history that's not even 40 yet won't be on that first UFC card, that is just, there's no way it's happening. There's no way that's going to happen, number one. And number two, the UFC can cash in on getting a few fights out of Fedor. You know this as well as I do. Pay-per-view hits? Come on. You got to be kidding me to think that Fedor Emelianenko is not going to be the headliner in that event. Just like we just said, Bernard, you look in the past. You go fight a fight in international territory, the headliner in that main event is usually the same origin of that country. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And actually, I laugh because, you always have these crazy conspiracy theories, but they're really not that crazy. And most of the time, they do come true. So, I can't really refute that. I mean, I have crazy political conspiracies. You have crazy MMA conspiracies. And let's just say both of us are right in the categories that we choose to pick and say in front of other people. So, man, I think it's definitely. I didn't really think Fedor was ever going to come back, which made me sad because I came into Fedor's career at the tail end of it, and I really thought he stopped early with 2 losses on his record. Somebody who hasn't lost their whole life loses twice and then probably get destroyed by it. I really thought he left a lot earlier than he should have, so it might be kind of good to see him come back. I'd love to see him fight again in my lifetime before he gets too old. So I definitely believe that's a good thing.
And one last thing, Bernard, you did great work for MMALockup at UFC 162, did the video work. I challenge the fans, go back and look. When I asked Dana White the question, look at the mannerisms, look how he reacted, and let the fans be the judge themselves. That's the best way, right?
Yeah, it is. You guys make sure you go check out all of our UFC 162 footage because we're going to hit you in the face with it until we go to another event because it was awesome. It opened up a lot of doors for us here at MMA Lockup. Chris, it's been real. We probably ran over there, but we haven't talked in a long time, so I don't care. People have been screaming and wanting us to put more stuff online, so here's more content for you guys.
Absolutely, Bernard. It's a pleasure, and I'll wait on the line while you take us away.
Yes, sir. That was Chris Matthews, guys. He is the host of MMA Lockup, the creator. I guess I should really go ahead and say he's the creator of MMA Lockup. Very fun to work with him. Always fun to work with Chris. Glad to be here at MMA Lockup, making strides in the MMA world, being recognized. You guys make sure, as we wrap up the show, you go like us on Facebook, you follow us on Twitter, you add us on Google, add us to your circle on your Google Plus. Go look us up on YouTube. Excuse me, subscribe. Do all that crazy internet stuff, you know what I mean? I'm young. I'm with that whole crowd of people who is, Instagramming and doing all that crazy stuff, although I refuse to do Instagram. Maybe Chris will probably persuade me to kind of make one of those one of these days. But you guys go look us up. Can't look for MMA Lockup without finding us. It's been real. Make sure you guys, if you're the last one here, remember to lock it up.